There's always going to be an answer if I'm prepared to actually look inside myself a little bit further. And, you know, understanding that your mindset is something that you have absolute control of yourself. You know, you have the power within you to manage your own mindset. And for me, the mindset piece was always the biggest piece. It's just always been about the mindset. Always been about self-acceptance. I think that's the massive piece for me was self-acceptance. And I actually didn't know how big that was. I think that's the other thing. When you start to do the sort of work that, you know, be supported by someone like you can go into your sort of self-love journey with no concept as to what that really means at all. And although I knew that I had very little self-belief, very little self-esteem, not very much self-confidence, what I didn't really understand was how little I accepted the person I was. You know, it was a constant battle against being the person that I was, and assuming that those things that had led me to have lowered self-worth, lowered self-esteem, little self-belief, were all signs of weakness, and of course they're not. You know, that for me, without a doubt, you know, one of the biggest sort of penny dropping moments in terms of my success story was recognizing that the very pieces of me that I had always presumed were weaknesses, they weren't weaknesses, they were highlighting where my strengths actually lie. So, you know, and if I look back on it, that more than anything else has a massive impact on how I've moved forward with my life, the way I view myself internally, what I know about myself, what I think of who I am, what I think of my achievements, to be able to actually be able to turn around now and say to others as well as myself that I'm proud of who I am. That's, I mean, my goodness, that's worth so much. I can't put a financial worth on that. That to me is success. To actually be able to go from where I was, to be able to sit there and still sit here and say, but I'm proud of this person that I am. I'm proud of all of those little pieces that I've gone throughout my life, that I've actually kicked myself for and beaten myself up for, and, you know, thought I'm weak, or I'm not brave enough, or why am I not more driven or more empowered? And you know, and flipping all of those on their head and recognizing that I will love and offer kindness and support to others to the hilt. You know, I have huge resilience and fortitude and persistence. Once I'm committed to something, I'm not going to let it go until I'm satisfied with where I've got to. You know, there's those elements of who I am that I'd had no reason up until I started to work with you to actually really understand that the worth that sits behind all of those pieces. So yeah, that for me, that's proper success. It's huge. It's huge. It's allowed me to define who I am, get to know who I am, understand that knowing what your values are in life matter more than anything else. I remember the first time you set me, you know, a sort of, you know, work out what your values are exercise. I didn't even know I had values. I mean, it was just, you know, but my values were huge. It's just I hadn't had an opportunity to examine what they were. There had been no space in my life for me. There had been no space in my life for me at all. And I had to learn that it was absolutely acceptable to want to have space in my life for me. Not only was it acceptable, it was vital, you know, and that alone, the sort of the way in which I've evolved off the back of that is enormous. My biggest mindset shift has been moving from believing that I was a small and relatively insignificant person with very little influence over external factors or the world around me, to understanding and valuing my own worth. I remember you saying to me, what is it that you're really scared of? What is it that you're really fearful of? The thread of what I said in return was that I was absolutely terrified I was going to fall and nobody would catch me. And actually, for me, being able to put myself into a coaching situation with you gave me that safety net to believe that whilst I was exploring and working out how to move forward and examining my life and working out the old stuff and all of that sort of thing, that if need be, you were kind of there to catch me. What I didn't realize at that point was actually I was learning to catch myself. For me, the word remarkable has become incredibly powerful. And if I need a reminder of who I am and what I'm about, and if I can look at my history and my story and everything that's happened in the last 40 plus years, that's my word, remarkable.